Hello and welcome to Thursday's interview here on Viking.TV with me, Anne Diamond. And this week we've been indulging ourselves in food and cookery. Well, my special guest today moved from America to France many years ago, actually. And when she first looked around to put down roots in the area, she was entranced by the atmosphere of food and cooking, the restaurants, the celebration of food. She said she could literally smell the butter in the air. She was a journalist covering all sorts of subjects, but Paris changed her life, and now she's an extensive food writer. Her company and website, Dancing Tomatoes, offers live cooking classes that people can join virtually from anywhere in the world. She also creates short YouTube videos showing her followers how to create classic French dishes. So let's have a look at her in action.
Our chocolate bread pudding is ready to serve. So here it is. It's a beauty. Well, if you love this kind of look, it looks, oh, it's perfect. I know it. Okay. Still quite warm, but not the blister that we would have had we served it right away. Do not serve this right away. Your guests will not like it if you do. Okay. There we go. I have to use my finger there. Okay. So I've got a little bit of sweetened cream here. I just blended sugar with creme fraiche. There we go. And now for the final little bit. I'm putting a little cocoa powder through a sieve, always. Okay. And here we have it. Our bread pudding made with day old bread, so nothing goes to waste. And I'm sorry, but I have to taste this. You just have to bear with me. I can't wait another minute. Brilliant. You are going to love this. Bon appetit.
Chocolate bread pudding. Could you be more indulgent? So much of the globe looks towards France for excellence in food. That's why it is generally called haute cuisine and is regarded as the ultimate. But why? And why, when you go all the way back to the days of TV star Julia Childs, have so many Americans particularly been obsessed with cooking the French way? Well, let's ask. Time to welcome my special guest, Susan Loomis. Hello, Susan. Hello.
Hello, Anne. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Oh, it's lovely to meet you. I've watched so many of your videos over the last few weeks. My mouth is watering and I just want to get into the kitchen to try. But what made you fall in love with France and French cooking?
Everything. It was butter in the air. It was broccoli, spinach. You know, I was an apprentice at a cooking school, and we would receive all the ingredients, and I could not believe the quality of ingredients we were getting. And then you'd sit down at the table, and everything tasted like exactly what it was. And the cheeses. You know, I remember my first baguette and camembert sandwich. You know, I was in the Tuileries, sitting on a bench, eating this incredible food. And it just, every day was a new discovery. And you know, France gets under your skin if you're in the food business, and it just might change my life.
And it did, didn't it? Can you describe that moment I said where you could smell the butter in the air?
Well, you know, the French bakers and pastry makers, they do a clever thing because they pipe the heat out of their basement kitchens onto the sidewalk. So that means they're piping all these yummy smells. So you're walking down the street and you just smell butter and you smell caramel and bread. And I swear, though, when I get off the airplane and I get, you know, outside the airport, I can already smell the butter.
You've got a good nose, but I understand what you're meaning. I don't necessarily smell it at the airport, but you certainly smell it when you go into Paris, or actually anywhere in France, and you just walk down the street, because everybody loves cooking and they love the smell of cooking to get into the air, don't they?
They do, and the French cook. You know, they cook and they eat meals and they sit down to eat meals. And so at certain times of the day, even in where I live in Paris, at certain times of the day, if I open my front door, it's like, oh my God, I wish I were eating at their house.
Yeah. And isn't that wonderful?
Yep. It is.
You're sharing passion for food just in the air.
Yeah.
So where did the passion for food begin? Was it food first or France first? Which happened first?
Oh, it was food first. I grew up in a family that we love to eat. We live to eat. And so I had a big family. My mother was a really good cook. My grandmother was a good cook. So I think I already had the passion in my blood. And I decided, I'm a journalist, and I decided I want to write about food. So I want to learn how to cook first. So I moved to Paris to be an apprentice, and that was it. I mean, it was just everything. I didn't really have preconceived notions about France. I didn't think I'd fall in love with it, but I did.
What is it that's missing about, because we in Britain have exactly the same feeling. We feel that we're not very good at cooking, and that probably a lot of our basic ingredients are pretty bland. And when you go across the channel to France, suddenly your taste buds are like, woof. You think we think of things like moule marinière and boeuf bourguignon and things like that, which we don't seem to be able to recreate in England. I mean, you have to go to France for them. Is that the way the Americans feel?
I think it is. And, it all has to do with the soil. It has to do with the way things are cultivated and the way the animals are raised. And France is an agricultural country, and it's part of their chauvinism. So they really take good care of their soil, and they eat only according to the seasons. So that means everything's fresh. It's, very local. France is small. And so you can get, I live in the center of Paris, and I can get vegetables raised in soil 45 minutes from where I live.
And there is a difference, isn't there? There really is a difference.
It's the world difference.
People pontificate about it, but there is a difference from something you bought in the supermarket, which came from goodness only knows where, and has probably had a very long journey to get to you, and has been wrapped in cling film, or whatever you call it in America. Can't remember what you call it in America.
Wrap.
Saran wrap. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been wrapped like that for probably weeks and weeks. There is such a difference to actually picking something yourself, or going down to the farmer's market and pick it yourself and smelling it first.
There is, and I'm sorry that people do pontificate, because in France nobody does, because it is the French way. So there's a movement called slow food, where the idea is to slow down and, go back to the old ways in a certain sense. I mean, I'm generalizing. It doesn't work in France, because that's how the French live. The French go to the market. It's no big deal. It's not elitist. You don't really spend that much more money than the supermarket. It depends. But it's just a way of life. Food is important, and the French understand that a good, delicious meal, and a meal that isn't rushed, contributes to your health and well-being, and delicious.
It's part of the culture. It's part of the lifestyle. When in the 1980s, was it then when you first went and you trained at La Varenne?
I did. I trained at La Varenne, and I got what's called a Grand Diplôme, which they award to their students and their apprentices. And it was a wonderful experience. I think, we all called it sort of boot camp for cooks, because it was a really great introduction into the food world. I mean, you never stop. You never stop. You never have time to take a break. But it's so exciting that it's wonderful. We worked with French chefs, and I worked on a project where I got into a lot of French kitchens, and I'm very well trained. I'm trained as a French chef, and I took that to my writing.
Did you ever know Anne Willan, who is the founder of?
She was a boss. Of course I knew her. Her idea was brilliant. Her idea for the school was brilliant.
What was the basic philosophy of it then?
Well, the philosophy was first of all, she had her staff were people like me, young, eager people who wanted to get in the food world. So we worked in exchange for being trained. And that's a very classical French system. It's called, we were stagiaires.
Stagiaire.
So we got up close and personal with the French chefs. She brought in French chefs. She brought in visiting chefs. I mean, we were there. We were doing everything. So we actually, I think, got a better education than the students who paid to go to the school. Mm-hmm. But that was her brilliance, was bringing in these really competent people to run the school. I mean, she had a staff, but bringing in the French chefs. So it was all very authentic, and we would interpret for them, and it was great. You know, it was great for everyone.
I bet it was hard work. I bet you really earned your kudos.
It was hard work, but that's where I learned that if you love what you do, you don't even think about it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you've seen the Disney movie Ratatouille, but it's
I keep meaning to, and I just haven't gotten around to it.
Oh, you've so got to. Oh, you've so got to, because it sums up everything you're talking about. But what I don't quite understand is why, yeah, we Brits don't really understand French cooking at its best, but the Americans seem to understand it and want it and really desire it, and yet fear it at the same time. What is it about? I don't want to say the average American housewife, because that sounds terrible, but but American people who really, really aspire to being able to do French cooking. Why do they want to do it so much?
Well, and they don't all. You know, it is reserved for certain people. But I think Americans are innately curious. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that we don't have roots. We don't have really cultural, traditional roots, most of us. We all came from somewhere else. So some of us can fall back on a couple of generations, but, you know, the French can fall back on 30 million generations, maybe the Brits also.
Yeah.
So when you grow up with that knowing where you come from, knowing who you are, having eaten with your grandparents and your great-grandparents, you know, that's why the French have such a confidence in their abilities. And Americans, we're all about, buzzing forward, learning, moving around all the time. You know, our friends are from all walks of life and all parts of the earth. So when we go to France, we just want to learn. We just want to gain some of that confidence and that joy and pleasure in food.
Yeah, it's a cultural depth, isn't it?
I saw with my students all the time. I had a cooking school for 20 years, and 80% of my students were American, and they just come in, and it doesn't matter if they're bank presidents, if they work for Google, it doesn't matter. They come in, their eyes are wide open.
I've only just discovered Julia Childs through the Meryl Streep movie, and now there's a new TV series which is absolutely brilliant. And she used to finish off all her programs saying bon appetit, and you did the same. So I imagine you have some sort of respect for the woman and what she did.
Oh, she was a good friend of mine, for one thing. I mean, she was, when I started in the business, she was right there, and she was encouraging, and she was, she mentored people, and she just was like, this is open for you. You do it, and you get paid for it, because, up until then it was kind of like, oh, sure, I'll cook dinner for 45 people because, or I'll write you a little article. And she's like, no, this is a job. This is a profession. And she was great. She was fabulous.
She was. So she was extraordinary, and she had a certain style, which may not catch on nowadays. How would you describe your style?
Oh, it's funny. Well, a dear friend of mine watches my videos, and she said, you've lived in France for so long, but you still look so American. Oh. So I don't exactly know what she meant, but I'm American. My style is I'm really devoted to, I love to teach, but I think I really want to put the consumer in touch with the producer, because I totally am devoted to keeping farmers on the land as much as we can. Yeah. And I always have been, ever since I started my career. So it just makes sense to me. And one of the reasons living in France is so great is because the systems here make sense. I go to the market, I meet a farmer, his hands are dirty, he raised my food, I give him my money. It just all makes sense.
Yeah, it's ancient in a way. In fact, you have said, I think, the French love of food is primordial.
It is. It is. It's just part of their being. It is something that calls them to the table. So I had dinner with friends last night, and the meal was very simple, very casual. It's super hot here. And so we had fresh anchovy fillets, and we had a little curry, and we had a little this, and we had a little that. Everything was so good. And then we had wine, and everybody, everybody's tense. They're all coming from their worlds. By the end of the meal, we're all laughing, and, the meal went on for 3 hours, and that's just daily. That's just kind of, I can't call it ordinary. I can just say the French really sit down and take the time and love it.
Yeah. Why don't we know that? Why don't we feel that instinctively? I mean, your book, your 2015 book, In the Kitchen, was a celebration of French life. It was more than just food. It's about the people who grow it and eat it, and also about how it's grown and eaten.
Yes, well, I've done many books. I've done 3 books on farm food, so in 3 different countries, and it is all about celebrating. And for that, in a French kitchen, I interviewed cooks, home cooks. I literally went around the country and did roundtables and got mostly women, not all women, to come talk to me about what they cook every night. And it's just mind-blowing because they don't just heat up a pizza. You know, they think about what they're going to make. They go to the market if they have time. If they don't, they've got a dad or a grandfather who makes, grows vegetables, or they innately understand that you serve a salad at every meal. The one thing that made me really laugh doing that book is I was, talking with all these women, and I said, okay, let's talk about vegetables. What's your favorite vegetable? So one woman raised her hand. She said, rice. I was like, what? Rice is not a vegetable.
No.
But, rice is really important to the French. It's very, very important.
Well, yeah, it's very important, but vegetables are, well, I mean, you're very big on vegetables. Have we in America and maybe Britain and some other countries forgotten about vegetables and how brilliant they are? And we don't teach our youngsters about vegetables.
Well, I can only speak to France and to America, and I would say in America, and it's so hard to generalize, but I would say we're very into vegetables. I mean, the percentage of vegans and vegetarians in France is rising. In America, everybody's getting on that bandwagon. And I think people, if they're educated, we really have to make a distinction, because people who are just hungry will eat what they can find and afford. And it's funny because my daughter is, she's studying organic agriculture and anthropology, and she has an internship this summer working on food justice, working on just this issue of getting good food to everybody. So it's a geopolitical thing, and that makes it complicated. It isn't complicated, it's simple, but we have kind of lost track of how to make it simple for people to get good vegetables.
So can you boil down to a phrase, what is the part you set out to play in spreading that word?
Well, every book I've written, every article I write, every blog post I do, every class I teach, even on dancing tomatoes, it's all about using seasonal ingredients.
Yeah.
And local. I want
local
farmers.
Use,
I want farmers to
sustainability, and you call serious technique.
The serious technique is that I'm trained. So I am going to show you how to hold your knife, and I'm going to show you what it is to dice, what it is to cut, what it is to take apart a chicken. I judge because it's virtual, and that was because of the pandemic, but it's continuing. It's virtual, so I don't know my people's skill, but I have to tell you, I get a lot of thank yous, a lot, because I really show people how to cook and build flavor.
It's also about the joy of going out into markets and seeing what you want to buy and then building that. I've got a lovely video, one of your videos, about the sheer simple joy of going out to a farmer's market and seeing something that looks gorgeous that you would like to take home and cook. Let's have a look at this.
I'm here to buy sausage, but this lovely lady from the Auvergne in the center of France is having me taste all of her emblematic cheeses. This is Saint-Nectaire. This is a sheep's milk cheese. And I just had a big chunk of this beautiful cow's milk cheese that I'm going to get. It's very young, very tender, very creamy. And I'm going to get a piece of that too. She is wonderful. Un tout petit peu moins. Oui, voilà. Parfait. Donc il y a deux Saint-Nectaire. Vous m'avez fait goûter le Saint-Nectaire là, mais ça c'est le oh pardon, le fermier.
Tout est des fermiers, hein. A à Z tout.
Okay, pardon. So we're now talking about sausages that are made with pork, from pork that are raised nicely, gently, and the people who raise the pork make the sausages. So they're very artisanal, and yet I can tell by looking at them they're very well made. So she insists, before I buy, that I taste. So definitely no lunch for me. Can you believe these flowers? So I thought my favorite flower vendors weren't there, but they were. I stopped to get these bachelor buttons, which are called bleuets in France, in French. And she wrapped up these really wonderful little furry flowers to go with them because they're not coming back to the market for 6 weeks. She said there are no customers. People have left the city. And I asked her if it was always like this in July. And she said, no. So this bouquet has to last a long time, but it's gorgeous. And I'm on my way home to prepare a market lunch. So I can't wait to put my flowers in the vase to decorate and serve the sausages and the gorgeous cheese.
So farmers markets, do you think that is step one?
Ideally, and again, I'm privileged. I live in France. There are farmers markets everywhere. In Paris, we have a farmers market to go to every day but Monday. The town I lived in for 27 years, we had 2 farmers markets every week, and I realize not everybody does. But everybody's knowledge is and awareness is rising, and the ideal, of course, is to go to a farmers market, and you get great food. You don't have to pay a lot for it. Sometimes I'm like, God, they just gave me this food. And also, it's joyful. It's fun. And you get to know your vendors, they call you by your name. And it's hard to be lonely when you have a farmer's market.
Actually, that's a very good point. It's a very sociable activity going to a market, isn't it?
It is. Well, and going to a cafe afterwards. Or, we're starting a series in Dancing Tomatoes where it will be getting to know Paris through her markets, through her cafes. And it's like that whole cafe culture. It's the whole market culture, too. You go out, you talk with people, you get your food, then you go to the cafe. And, it's a lifestyle. And I think we can imitate that. We can imitate it.
And very often they know, don't they? They say, we've got this particularly lovely sausage or this wonderful new tomato that's just out. Cook it with a bit of... They often know how to cook it themselves if you listen.
Yeah, the other day the farmer was selling artichokes, and so we said, now, can I steam these? And he was like, no, can I eat these raw? He goes, oh, no, you have to cook them. And he gave her a recipe, and, there she went, happy as a clam.
Oh, lovely. Back to your own story. So once you were in France and you were loving the cooking and you were earning your spurs, but in the end you bought a house in the French countryside. Tell us all about it.
Well, we found a house at a former convent, and it was falling apart. But at that time, this was in the early 90s, and at that time we had a lot of friends who'd done this, bought these old houses and brought them back to life, and it was quite common. It's less common now, I think, but so we moved in, we had a child, and we moved in and lived in this situation where my ex-husband did all the work, and it was slow and wonderful, and I'd go haunt brocantes, which are sort of like antique stores, junk stores, and we brought this house back to life, and honestly, it was a 10-year project. And at the end of 10 years, I opened a cooking school in my home because we built a professional kitchen. And by then I had 2 kids, and they were going to the local schools, and we lived a French life. And we were actually right downtown in a sizable town. So we had all the shops, my next door neighbor's a butcher, and then I had the bakeries. And so it was a very wonderful, easy place to do the kind of work I was doing. Writing books and teaching classes and raising children.
It sounds idyllic.
It was idyllic. You got to understand it's a lot of work. I mean, I loved it, though. People go, oh, my God, you lived the perfect life. Well, I guess I did. But behind the scenes, of course, you're always searching for suppliers and going to that new market. But I have to say I love my job because my job includes finding cool markets to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. But that sort of lifestyle, that experience resulted in your book En Rue d'Atin, The Simple Pleasures of Life in a Small French Town. And it's not just about cooking, it's about the whole of life that revolves around cooking and eating and shopping. In fact, it won you an award for best literary food writing, did it not?
It did. It was, and it's still a good seller. I still get lots of notes and, oh, I'm reading your book and it's so wonderful. But I'm very, very honored because, I write cookbooks and I do a lot of research and I write a lot in my books other than recipes because I have a message to pass. And it's very gratifying that people read a book like a memoir with recipes. It's got recipes. But they live your life and they come to the school and they're like, oh my God, I know that house and I know those people, and through the book. So it's fun.
Do you know, I mean, at the moment, the world is going through some bad times. And of course, we've just got through a pandemic. And I think a lot of people are reconsidering their lifestyle. Do you think you could do it now? I mean, do you have any tips for people who might think, I want to give up the rat race and I want to actually find something new and something more meaningful? Could you come to France now and set up a lifestyle like you did?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Number one, real estate prices here are crazy low in the countryside. Number two, everybody's willing. The French have become, they're sort of delighted. They were, I had some obstacles, I suppose, when we first moved, but I will say that I have a wonderful group of friends and they're quite interested in the outside world. So I definitely think you can. I mean, the prices of food, yes, we live in a tough time. But I think in France is one of these places where you can actually create so much beauty, enjoy so much pleasure over such simple things.
Yeah. In fact, you did have tough times because wasn't it a friend or somebody in your village who said, you've arrived here like a cheveu dans la soupe, a hair in the soup. No one asked you to come.
No one asked us to come. It is true. You have to be humble. You have to. And we had a little problem with the priest next door, our next door neighbor. So he was probably the worst experience. And that's a whole chapter because, I was raised Catholic. I thought priests were, easy, whatever. I was raised around Jesuits. I mean, they were interesting. And not the case. But we got through it. With the help. I had to go to a French lawyer to get help writing a letter. And she heard the story and she said, oh my goodness, I cannot believe you are having this problem as a foreigner. You are a guest in our country. I'm going to take your case pro bono.
Well, that's interesting. One person sees it as you being a guest, another one as a cheveu dans la soupe.
I know. But, it's funny. I mean, I took a lot of hits because I was out there a lot, and people would tease me about being American, or I'd hear people commenting. Not everybody loves Americans. But, my job wasn't to pay attention. My job was to, find out whatever I could find out about what was going on around me so that I could transmit it to other people. Yeah. And once you start interviewing people about their lives and their work, they're honored that you care. And so I feel like I kind of get the best.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. We should be sharing anyway. Something that the French have always been brilliant at and that we all have to learn from is their breads and pastries. Yeah. We look now at some of the beautiful croissants that we all love, that most of us don't get the best of in our local supermarket. And I know you made a lovely video. Shall we have a look at it now? You made a lovely video of how to identify the best croissant. And this is a real tutorial. Shall we have a look at that now?
I want to show you the different shapes a croissant can come in. So we've already seen the crescent shape. When I first came to France, a croissant this shape was made with margarine. That was called a croissant ordinaire. We don't have any more croissant ordinaire. And this particular baker just loves this shape, so that's how they make it. But look at the difference in these croissants. Of course, they're all croissants, but this one is puffy and kind of short. This one's all gold. This one's a little bit mild looking. This is kind of floppy. This is okay. So I'm now going to cut them in half and show you what's on the inside. Okay, so here we get to look at the inside of a croissant. Now, when you buy a croissant, you don't get to see the inside, but from looking at the outside, you can kind of tell. And then again, sometimes you just have to try. But one of the things that I look for in a croissant is that it's really, really golden on the outside. Now, this one is perfectly golden, but look at the inside. It's underbaked. You can tell right here that there's dough there. So as beautiful as this looks, it is not going to be my favorite croissant. This croissant is well baked. It's not very flaky. It doesn't look like there's a lot of butter in it. And you can actually tell that from the outside because it's kind of dull. So I'm guessing this croissant is going to be much breadier than what I like in a croissant. This croissant is beautiful. It's perfectly baked. It looks like it's going to be fairly buttery, which is what you want in a croissant because a croissant is about 2/3 butter. Maybe not quite 2/3. But it's yeast, flour, salt, water, and butter. Big butter quotient.
I found that fascinating because I know a good croissant from a bad croissant, but I don't know how to identify it first. So that was really useful. How on earth do you find so many new recipes when your publishers probably say, all right, that did really well, and so many of your books have been bestsellers, and they ask for another book, and you think, oh my goodness, how many recipes have you got to think up new?
Well, I don't think up recipes. I mean, I do because I love to cook, but I go out and talk to people. And the thing about food, it's endless. It's endless. There's always a new way to do something. Like I'm just going to take an example of radish leaves. Now, everybody makes soup with radish leaves. Frankly, radish leaf soup to me is one of the most boring things I can think of. So I got a new idea the other day for radish leaves. And so I chopped them. I sauteed them with garlic and hot peppers like we do in the U.S. with turnip greens. And I'm telling you, they are incredible. So that's a new recipe.
Yeah.
And you can adapt endlessly, and people are always talking to me about food. So finding new recipes is not a huge challenge.
You just listen to people.
Really, that's what it is.
Yeah. Since I discovered your website, Dancing Tomatoes, I love the fact that the videos are quite short, but they are tutorial in that you can almost keep up with you in preparing a dish. And they're not difficult, but they are very thoughtful. Why did you call it Dancing Tomatoes?
Oh, it's so funny. I work with an associate, and we really spent a long time thinking about the name. And part of our mandate is to be international. So we did a series in Finland, and we've got lots and lots of plans. So we didn't really want to hook it to France, for everything. We wanted the flexibility to travel. And we just played and played and played and played, and so many names were taken. I mean, all the obvious names are taken. So then we hit on, we wanted joy, we wanted simplicity, we wanted something with food, and we wanted something fun, because we honestly have a lot of fun making the videos. We really do. I mean, behind the scenes of Dancing Tomatoes is really fun. Well, so, it was random in a way, I suppose you'd say.
Well, we've got a little video that you made yourself about Dancing Tomatoes to introduce everybody to it. And just in case anyone watching isn't familiar with it, this is what it's all about.
I'm Susan, and I want to tell you how Dancing Tomatoes got started. It was March 2020, Paris, France. I had my bags packed to go to Iceland for 3 months to write. And then we got lockdown. No flights, nothing. So I did what I do and I started baking cookies. I didn't know anybody in my apartment building, but I put some cookies in a bag and I put them in front of my neighbor's door. And the next morning when I opened my door, in fell a book. And inside the book was a note that said, "All we need is love." Signed Ricardo and Sami. That began a COVID WhatsApp relationship. And one day we dared to have tea together. And it turned out we had so many things in common, so many complementary passions. And that's how Dancing Tomatoes was born. It was a natural fit.
Well, there we are. That's why, that's what it's all about. And it must be fun. How many videos do you have to make every week? And isn't it quite difficult working with food, getting it right on one take?
Yeah, it is. Yes and no. I mean, it depends. You know, we film 2 days a week. And that can be 4 to 8 videos a week.
Yeah.
And we also are working on classes. We're working on a simple basics of pastry class right now. So if it does, you know, mostly things work. And if they don't, we just film them again.
Yeah, yeah. But it is difficult, isn't it? Getting it right. And also it's about the look. It has to look good at the end of the day. It has to work. Do you ever do any videos where it actually comes out really badly?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. I'm trying to think. You know, I can't think of any. Oh, I know. I was working on this amazing dessert that I love. It's called, it's a cream dessert. You put gelatin in it, you chill it overnight. So I had to unmold it. Well, I've made it 1,000 times. It always works. So I go to unmold it, all over the floor. So we ditched that video, but then I was teaching a live class and I made crème brûlée.
Oh, yes.
Same damn thing. Same thing. I've made it 1,000 times, and I have to admit I pushed it a little bit. Well, I unmolded it. I've got people watching me live, and it went all over the plate. So that's life.
That's life. Absolutely. You've got to do it, haven't you?
I remade it. We refilmed. We sent all of our students a remake. And I explained exactly what happened. And I cannot tell you the letters we got.
Yeah.
Thank you for making a mistake. Now I know that I can do it.
Absolutely. I was going to say there's value in the outtakes, isn't there, really, in the bloopers? Because we don't all get it right first time, do we? And even you don't get it right every time, I guess. And that's cooking for you.
No. I mean, you know, there are billions of variables. Food is a living thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you made a beautiful video with a question mark at the end. You say a cucumber parfait. This is a parfait from cucumber. Just have a look at this.
And I'm going to transfer my chives to the fresh cheese. So that's part of the flavor. The other flavor is this little white wine vinegar. You don't need champagne vinegar. That's, you know, you can use it if you want. But this is a beautiful white wine vinegar. So we need just a couple teaspoons, and if you put your thumb over the lip of over the hole of the bottle, you can control how much you're using. I'm going to fold that together with the chives, a little touch of vinegar, and this is Tellicherry pepper, which is a fairly standard pepper, but it's got the most floral. And you add quite a bit. It's got the most floral flavor. That goes into the fromage frais, little bit of fine sea salt, not too much, just a pinch, and that brings up the flavor. Okay, so our amuse-bouche is just about done. So here's what we're gonna do. We've got these beautiful cocktail glasses. Don't know if you can see, but there's an S on them because they're mine. And I'm going to put the cucumber in each glass. Again, I'm letting the cucumber fall in the middle of in the sort of center of the glass, because I'll show you why. Because I don't want the sides of the glass to get messy. I do not want that. And you can see it's not easy to prevent that. But don't worry, we shall fix it. Here we go, here we go, here we go. Okay, That's that. And you can see I'm making a little hollow in the center so that we can have a little extra fromage frais. Now, next step is fromage frais. Okay, you need to be very steady of hand and brave of heart to do this next one, because you don't want any drips on the side of your glass. Here we go. This is a quite nourishing amuse-bouche. My recommendation always is that if you serve this, serve it by itself. One little amuse-bouche with a beautiful glass of Sauvignon Blanc. There we go. One more spoonful. And what you're going to do is, you've already got the cucumber has been draining in. The idea is to put it in the refrigerator so it's chilled. You don't want the cheese chilled. You don't want the fromage frais chilled because you won't get the flavor. So here you go. Now we've got our little chive tips. I'm going to put those in there like that. And if you want to, tiny. Okay. And there you have a beautiful amuse-bouche to open up the palate and to refresh everyone who is coming to have supper. Bon appétit.
What do you want your readers to gain from you?
Well, I really want them to get excited about cooking. I want them to try new things. I want them to realize that they can do it. You know, confidence in the kitchen is a big thing. And I know from 20 years of having live students come to my school that the main thing keeping people from thinking they're a good cook is they don't have any confidence.
Yeah.
So you look at a simple video, you make it, people go, wow. And all of a sudden you feel like the star of your world. And I really want to give that to people.
Yeah, do you get many letters from people saying, look, I know how to make a shepherd's pie or a spaghetti bolognese, but that's it? And yet I gather, we probably with a little bit of expert help, like tips and tricks from you, they could actually do something a bit more splendid, a bit different, they could call their own.
Absolutely, but they need a teacher. They need a guide. They need a book. They need, they need me. People need me.
And you get that feedback, I presume, from your audience now.
Yeah, well, I get a lot of feedback, people saying, wow, I never thought of that. I'm going to try this. I can't wait to try it. And I always encourage them to let me know how it turned out. And it's very gratifying. I think it's just wonderful. Yeah,
the feedback you get from people, being able to reach out to people. But also, I think if you are, as you were saying, if you're a chef at home or you're a cook at home or you're a housewife at home and you're just sort of cooking the meal for tonight, the idea of being able to just tap into your expertise and get something that would just make it a little bit different. There's a little video I caught watching through Dancing Tomatoes of pork chops with pimento de spelette, which made it look fantastic. Just have a look at this.
So I've got the pork on the plate, and any juices that the pork gives up goes into the sauce also, because that is flavor, and we want flavor. Here's what we're gonna do. Got this yummy sauce. Okay. All right. So a little bit of the sauce on the pork. Let's clean up our little plate. Add some more parsley. Just at the edge and just on top. And some salt. Here we go. A little bit of fleur de sel. And there we have a beautiful pork with piment d'Espelette and cream sauce. So make this any time of year. And remember about our giveaway. Bon appétit.
So, long story cut short, the best dishes start with fresh and seasonal ingredients. Is that the trick?
Absolutely. And local, you know, and when you think about meat, for instance, I mean, if you can meet the person, if you can know where your meat is raised and know that it was raised thoughtfully, you know, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And, you know, seafood too, if you can. The thing is, not everybody has the privilege of living close to their producer. So I always tell people, do the best you can. Absolutely do and search. If you're looking for something that you can't find, call a restaurant. Talk to the chef. Usually chefs are very happy to tell you where they get their ingredients.
Or if you're out at a restaurant and you taste something really nice, don't worry about asking the chef what his secret ingredient might be. I imagine most chefs are very, love to actually share.
Well, chefs are people. I mean, they're excited if people are excited about what they're doing.
It's something that chefs on Viking cruise ships already know, of course, and they do incorporate into the menus aboard. Viking's Karina Hagen has been exploring France's markets too. Have a look at this.
In the heart of Libourne is Place Abel-sur-Champ.
Bonjour chef, ça va?
Today I'm exploring its market with Viking chef Magali. This local farmers market has been a fixture in Libourne since the 13th century, and it continues to delight.
This is something I used to do since I'm really young. We're going almost every day to the market.
Good food has long been a cornerstone of French culture, and at markets like these you can experience that passion firsthand.
We buy everything seasonal and local. With this kind of fruits, it's impossible not to eat.
Viking shops here too. It's part of the freshness our guests taste on board our ships. The market is home to a wonderful tapestry of colours, smells, and some of the friendliest faces I've seen. It's a true feast for all your senses that's certain to please.
Oh, that's a good carrot.
The Libourne Farmers Market offers a quintessentially French experience, keeping age-old traditions alive. We look forward to seeing you soon and sharing with you all the best of this part of France.
What about wine? I mean, you talk about the flavours of the food and the incredible variety of the landscapes and the sheer number of exciting wines to try with your food.
Well, you know, France, I mean, once you drink a good wine in France, don't drink it again because there are thousands to discover.
Yeah.
So I do wine pairings with the food, and you know, there's sort of no holds barred in a sense. Like it used to always be white wine with fish, red wine with meat. Well, today we all know that if you've got a great wine and a good meal, the color of the wine is less important than we used to think it was. So I love white, I love red. I try to think of wines that are obtainable, but that will really truly complement the food.
And they do make a difference, don't they? It does make a difference if you know what you're doing.
It does. Well, it does. But take a suggestion. I think, again, people are very intimidated by wine.
Yeah.
And the point is to make it simple, to taste it, to know that you can taste it. And when you taste something you like, go ahead, go back and get another bottle. See what grapes were in that one and try a different winemaker. You know, you have to experiment. You have to focus a little bit on the wines. You can't just go buy a $3 chuck and think that that's going to be wonderful with your meal.
You know how they always say that Parisians are very different from the rest of France? Is that true from a food point of view?
No. Well, they're more sophisticated because they have more at their fingertips. But every Parisian, believe me, every true Parisian grew up, their mother or their grandmother grew up in a region. Mm-hmm. So they're chauvinistic as can be. So I don't think they're different. They're just, it's a big city. They're busier, you know, and we have all kinds of markets at our disposition. We have restaurants, but no, I mean, scratch a Parisian, you've just got a French person.
That's nice to know. But the French do have a personal relationship with their food. Your latest book, Plat du jour?
Yes.
which is gorgeous.
Thank you.
Oh, can you explain? I mean, we all know plat du jour is basically when you go into a restaurant, they tell you what their plat du jour is. But I get this feeling that it means a bit more than that in France. A plat du jour is what?
Well, the plat du jour is the main course of the day. So truly the way it began at on the farm at Mimi's house. You know, she was out there, she had her farmyard. She chose what she would make every day. Then it went to the city, and the chef goes to the market every day. And he's, you know, honestly, he's like, okay, I'm here to make a living. What's the best deal at the market? It's always going to be whatever is seasonal, always, and whatever is local. So spinach season, it's going to be spinach. Mackerel season, it's going to be mackerel. So it is by nature local and seasonal.
So it's true cultural, yeah. So I was going to say, it's true cultural meaning is what's available locally. It's going to taste fresh. It's going to taste good. It could be anything from an apple tart to tomatoes with parsley, as we saw there, to sea scallops, to whatever. But it's
whatever it is, and it, you know, the chef's going to wrap it into a menu that's going to be there for anybody to come in and enjoy. So economics is part of it. So it's so much fun to make a plat du jour. Plat du jour can also include leftovers. And that's where the idea of shepherd's pie comes in. Of course. You know, because, you know, we call it hachis parmentier, but it's leftovers. It's elegant leftovers.
Well, I suppose that's always the way, isn't it? Something like a poule au pot, a chicken casserole or whatever, could have anything in it, couldn't it?
Well, it would have the seasonal vegetables in it for sure. Yeah. I mean, if it's carrot season, well, it is. I mean, if you make a poule au pot, it's usually winter, and you've got turnips and carrots and, you know, onions and all that goes into it. But then what you do with the leftovers of that poule au pot, you wrap it into a quiche. You put it into an omelet. You know, nothing is ever wasted. Nothing is ever wasted.
A boeuf bourguignon, again, a beef, a lot of people might think a beef casserole, but again, it could have anything put in it. And again, it's got its uses in a leftover form.
Well, hachis parmentier really came from that. Yeah.
And a bouillabaisse?
It came from a leftover boeuf bourguignon. You take, or there's another dish in plat du jour that's called œuf meurette. So let's say you have sauce left over from a boeuf bourguignon, which you always will. Yeah. So the next day you poach eggs in that sauce. Oh, you have an amazing dish.
It is a scrumptious book. How long does it take to produce a book like this? Because it's not just about the recipes and you thinking it through and then cooking it. It's about the photography too.
Yeah, well, I'm really lucky with my photographer. We also have quite a good time. So, you know, for that book, we did 2 weeks every season. So 8 weeks of photography so that we could get all the seasonal vegetables.
Yeah. So how many times are you cooking the same dish over and over again to get the photography right?
You know, I mean, I just cooked a seasonal dish. So a lot. I mean, we aim for 10 photographs a day.
Oh, really?
That is a killer schedule.
Yeah. And I imagine there's always somebody around to sort of help eat it up.
Well, you know, that's the other thing about my world is that there's always lots to eat. So when the kids were home, of course, I mean, so I guess I end up being popular, but I don't know if it's me or my food.
Do you despair that the next generation coming up is all about, instant food that they can order through an app on their phone that gets delivered, food that doesn't taste as good as the sort of food you've been talking about?
I could, but I don't, because, you know, and I make reference to my own children, what I mean, we all do. And it's not that my daughter cooks, my son doesn't, but my daughter lives on a college campus. They all cook. They all sit down to have dinner. They go to the farmers markets. And I'm thinking, you know, they're not that exceptional. Maybe there are going to be those people. So I don't know as many people who pick up their phone and order food. I know there are gazillions of them. Yeah. But I don't despair because I can't afford to.
Well, if they watch Dancing Tomatoes, they would know that it can be quick and easy. And actually, it can be quicker and easier than waiting for the food delivery guy to come.
Oh, it's so much more satisfying. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
You know, and if I can ever, we have a young intern working with us. She's 20 years old. I mean, I'm just so happy. I've like, you know, anytime I can get my hands on somebody to change their mind about food, I'm delighted. Absolutely delighted. And our demographic actually for Dancing Tomatoes is quite wide. I mean, we have people from the mid-20s on.
That's good news, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
And
really
also, is it all over the world?
Yes. Well, except
Mostly.
for who ban, you know, the internet. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Well, I'll let you go because I'm sure you're off to cook something amazing for somebody.
Well, this has been delightful, and thank you for your absolutely smart, wonderful questions.
Oh, well, thank you for Dancing Tomatoes, because I am dying to get back into the kitchen now and chop something and saute it and do something that even gets anywhere near what you do. You make it look so easy, but I like the fact that you've admitted that sometimes it goes wrong too.
Oh, of course, of course. Thank you so much.
Susan, thank you so much. So everybody watching right now, don't forget, it's called Dancing Tomatoes or Tomatoes, depending where you come from. And your latest book is Plat du Jour, which I have to say is an absolute delight. But most of all, it's been delightful to meet you. Thank you so much, Susan, for coming on.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine, really. Thank you.
Brilliant to meet you. Thank you very much. We can almost taste it. Thank you. Well, there you are, another wonderful Thursday interview, I hope you agree, here on Viking TV. Join me again and Diamond on Viking TV next Thursday, when we'll have somebody equally super to interview and talk to. Until then, do stay safe and well. Bye-bye.